All right, good evening to you here. For those watching across the Sunshine State here on the FortHSFootball.com social media networks, it's time for the South Florida Blitz here, going into week number 5. Joshua Wilson here with you as we do this each and every week on Tuesday nights for South Florida, 7:30 to 8:15. Then after the South Florida Blitz tonight, and we have the North Florida Blitz, 8:30 to 9:15. We appreciate everybody joining us. If you are following us or you haven't followed us on social media or just finding us on social media at FortHS Football, except on X and / Twitter, that is at FLAHS Football. And of course on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're getting closer and closer to 1,000 subscribers. Once we hit that milestone of 1,000 subscribers, we can start doing some additional things with y'all on the shows and across the FortHSFootball.com YouTube channel platform. So hit that subscribe button. You can also click notification bell when we put new content up or go live. So again, FortHSFootball.com at YouTube.com / FloridaHSFootball. So if you go to YouTube.com / at the sign FortHSFootball. All right. As we get ready and set the table here for week 5, if you got a comment, question, hit that comment box there, Facebook, X / Twitter or YouTube. You can hit the comment. You got a question. We'll have the fan question coming up here later in the show. And our guest tonight will be Naji Tobias from Muck City Media Enterprises, also from CanesCounty.com on Rivals. But we'll talk to Naji more about everything in terms about the Muck area, Clewiston, Glades Central, Pahokee, Glades Day, some Palm Beach County football as well. So, join us there for that coming up here around 7:45. Naji Tobias will be on to talk to us about everything around with Muck City Media and everything in the Muck area. Some really good football there in the Muck area, as usually over the years. There's been some ups and downs, but we'll have Naji break it down for us there and all of that. But with that said, it is time for the Blitz lines. And Vero Beach, they secured their first win of the season. Finally, after 4 games, the Indians are now 1-3 and secured their first win, 27-0 over Centennial in district play. So Vero Beach is now in the driver's seat in district play, and that includes Centennial, Treasure Coast, and Fort Pierce Central. So those 4 teams in that district there along the Treasure Coast there. But Vero Beach, hey, finally get on the board, finally get a win on the first win of the season. Always good to get that in and out of the way there. And good job for Lenny Janikowski's Indians getting on the board here as we roll along with the Blitz lines. And John Carroll, 4-0 on the season. They completed their game last night against Fort Pierce Westwood, a game that was delayed from, I want to say, week 3. I want to say coming after week 3. Yes, week 3, where it was delayed. The game was suspended during the third quarter due to weather, but the Golden Rams sitting there 4-0, and that's hey, after missing the postseason last year, and they were a state semifinalist in 2022. Hey, John Carroll, Mickey Gritty's program looking pretty good, and as we mentioned, Glades Central off to a hot start, and we're going to talk to more when Naji is on about this. But Glades Central off to a 4-0 start here. And what a start for the Raiders here and everything. So good job to them. And I also mentioned up in the Treasure Coast area, Jensen Beach. How about them blowing out Sebastian River 48-0? Jensen Beach still remains undefeated on the season as well. And that is looking pretty good there, especially with some of the teams that we don't usually talk about being in the mix and 4-0 and in this region, especially Treasure Coast, Palm Beach County. There is also a lot to talk about with Palm Beach County. Teams you wouldn't expect to be in the conversation here at this particular point, usually, especially in the terms of undefeated. And that goes for Boca Raton, West Boca Raton, Jupiter. I mean, these 3 teams, they have risen to the top here. We had West Boca Raton's coach on last week, and Jupiter will eventually hopefully get Jason Cradman on because Jupiter, they're really rocking and rolling there. The Warriors are doing well as well, 4-0. West Boca 3-0 on the season. And Looking at it, everything, Boca Raton defeated Boynton Beach 36-0. West Boca Raton defeated Seminole Ridge 42-8. And Jupiter, they had the toughest battle of all the three teams there we just mentioned. 28-13 over Spanish River, which is also showing improvement. It was a playoff team last year, so hats off to the Bobcats, to the Bulls, and to the Warriors. Wow, that's a handful and a mouthful right there, and that sentence right there. But as we march on here with everything here in the Blitz lines, how about this? Cardinal Newman punishes Pahokee to move to 4-0. Now, so what's interesting about Pahokee, they were ranked number 10 last week in our world classification rankings to the Florida HS by the FloridaHSFootball.com sports media rankings. And Pahokee, in most years, this would have been a very, very competitive game, but in this situation, not so much, as where Cardinal Newman 43-8 over Pahokee. The Blue Devils, they're kind of going up, down, up, down. And again, this will be another topic we'll discuss with Naji coming up here around 7:45 here. And all right, now everybody's going to be asking, okay, why is Atlantic included in a separate? It wasn't included in the first undefeateds we talked about with West Boca Raton, and Jupiter. Well, here's this headline here: Atlantic blasts a previously undefeated Blanche Ely, and the Eagles just literally just trounced all over them, 42-13 to remain undefeated at 4-0. And speaking of Delray Beach Atlantic, they will be heading up the Florida Turnpike here on Friday night to take on First Academy. They had Atlantic was going to be off these next 2 weeks, believe it or not, and they only had 9 games coming into the season, but with a schedule opening coming up open for First Academy, the Atlantic took the opportunity to be able to go and get on the road and play the Royals, and that's a huge matchup. We talked more about that last night in the Central Florida Blitz, and that was one of the pick 6 games, and that pick was for Atlantic over First Academy. So we'll see if the Eagles hold up on that end of the deal. Let's see if they win that game and prove me right, or if the Royals are going to prove me wrong come Friday night. And but Atlantic 4-0 on the season. So Palm Beach County football's looking really, really solid here so far here. And again, from not some of the teams for some of the teams that are there, not the traditional teams that you would usually expect in the mix, but here's Atlantic, one of the teams that has always been in the mix as of lately over the last many years. They're right there in the thick of it in the conversation as well. All right, rolling on here with this. How about St. Thomas Aquinas squeaking by Western? So this is interesting. 42-6 last week against Columbus, but here you had to struggle against a 23-15 win over Western, which it leads to some questions here for me as to, okay, is it I guess I get to look at it 2 different ways. Okay, did St. Thomas Aquinas either underestimate Western because of Western's record coming into the game, which is 0-2, and they've had a couple of close games, especially the one against Hoover in week 1? Or is Columbus seriously, for St. Thomas Aquinas, blowing out Columbus last week to only have a tight ball game here with Western this past week? Is Columbus really that far off of removed as a state championship contender in terms of being able to compete and being able to hold their own? And again, I think there's a lot more questions here about how South Florida is going to play out this year versus not, and we'll see what happens here. But St. Thomas Aquinas squeaking by Western, just a little concerning there. But speaking of Western, Western still remains winless on the season, and the schedule does get a little easier this week for the Wildcats, and their first win might be on the horizon this week with a Taravella on the schedule, a Taravella program that has been struggling for quite a while. So Coach Rack and his Wildcats may get win number 1 this week, so we will see what happens come later this week, especially on Friday night. Cardinal Gibbons, this one kind of head scratch. It was a head scratcher to me, may have head scratched a lot of people in South Florida. 43-39, they dropped that one on the road to West Broward, and the Chiefs got a tough schedule ahead. They're still the likes of Boca Raton. That's there might be a win there potentially, but they got Chaminade Madonna later on the schedule. So I'm just sitting here kind of wondering, what's going to happen for Chaminade Madonna. So we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. All right, rolling along here. American Heritage bounces it back against Naples here. Looking at American Heritage here, they're really doing what they're supposed to do, play a tough schedule, doing what they can, and but they bounce back against Naples 23-3, and good win there for the Patriots here. But speaking of Chaminade Madonna, they romp all over Miami Edison, 56-19, and Chaminade Madonna, they got a big game this week coming up here, and they got Miami Norland this week at home, and that'll be a huge game to watch here. So that'll be a game that's on our pick 6 this week, and of course American Heritage this week has Miami Central, so a lot of good South Florida football to be had and to be seen this week. And then, of course, speaking of Miami Central, blowing out Pompano Beach 67-0 to take the lead in their district. Miami Central, Pompano Beach, same district, but Miami Central was a heavy favorite coming into the season for their district. So no surprise there, 67-0 over the Golden Tornadoes of Pompano Beach. And speaking of teams now not previously undefeated, now Booker T. Washington turns back Immaculate LaSalle and beats them 35-20. And got to give it to the Tornadoes. I mean, Nice Harris, what he's been doing there since coming back again for now in his 4th stint. And honestly, Immaculate LaSalle, hey, they were getting some conversation down there, especially Miami-Dade County, for their hot start. Now, it's not to say that Immaculate LaSalle won't make the playoffs. They're definitely in the mix here, but competing that well against Booker T. Washington, 35-20. Hey, I gotta give them hats off for the Royal Lions to do that. And rolling on, this is one of these 70-point games that we have seen this past week across the state. Here's another one. Homestead rolls Southwest Miami 77-6. I mean, I talked about it last night on the Gulf Coast Blitz where Cardinal Mooney and Booker both. Cardinal Mooney had 72 points, and then Sarasota Booker had 70 points. And then, of course, here you go, Homestead, the highest number this week so far in terms of 70-plus point game this past week. 70-plus point games. Southwest Miami on the receiving end of that loss right there. Homestead rolls them 77-6. But, hey, it gives Homestead their 2nd straight win on the season after starting 0-2. So the Broncos trying to get back into state championship contention form, and 2 wins now on the road. That is good for them. And rolling along here to Columbus. Columbus, man, they bounced back 17-14 against Miami Palmetto. I took Miami Palmetto in the picks last week, but the Explorers, they flexed their muscle just enough to win that game by 3 points. But when these two teams meet, there usually is always a tight ball game somewhere in this potential of everything, and this of how these teams play. And this was a district game for them, so wouldn't be surprised if you see these two teams again match up somewhere potentially maybe in the GMAC week coming up here later this season, which is the GMAC Bowl games. That's usually around week 9. Or you potentially could see these two teams match up somewhere in the postseason, be it in the regional quarters or maybe even the regional semifinals. These two teams have a long, storied history together, and another tight ball game. But I'm wondering again about Columbus. Are we on a struggle bus here? It's like, last week, 42-6 for the Explorers. This week it's 17-14. I mean, we'll have to see what happens here, because along the way, if you want to make the state championship, there's got to be some improvements made along the way here. But I give credit for Dave Dunn scheduling the tough schedule that he has scheduled the Explorers here. And last but not least, Miami Norland edges Northwestern 21-17, and that's a really good battle. It shows Northwestern is back. They're going to contend. They're not going to win every single game under Teddy Bridgewater this year, but Miami Northwestern will be a playoff team this year. They will forget about that 4-6 season last year and where they missed the playoffs. So I will give them that. But Norland, tough battle this week coming up. Even Columbus and Northwestern, another game that is on the pick 6 this week, and those two teams going at it this week as well. So again, a lot of good football coming up in South Florida. All right. We're going to take our first water break here, 2 minutes, then we're going to bring Naji on, and we're going to talk Muck City Media here coming up here after the break right here on the South Florida Blitz here on the FortHSFootball.com and the FortHSFootball.com social media platforms. We'll be right back. right after this. All right, welcome back here to the South Florida Blitz, and it is time for the interview part of the show, and we got Naji Tobias here from Muck City Media, and I've known Naji for a long time, and I appreciate you being able to join us here, Naji, and I mean, first and foremost, I know you've had your years over there at New Era Prep, but now you're off on your own thing with Muck City Media, and first, thank you for joining the show, and talk about forming Muck City Media and what you're aiming to do with the Muck City Media, considering that it's been an area that has been underserved in media coverage for a long time, and especially with newspaper coverage, it seems that it kind of evaporated out there in the Muck area. So kind of talk about that and everything.
Josh, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate you. So about Muck City Media, the goal is basically to make sure that they have their own presence. And as you just stated, they have been underserved for quite some time right now. And I want to make sure that I do my part to make sure that they're being represented and that they're being heard in the right way, not just with football, but with other sports as well, which we'll get into at some point down the line. So we want to make sure that the Muck, also known as the Glades, that's Belle Glade, South Bay, and Pahokee, those who are from there, those who are born there, those who have been raised there, we want to make sure that they are represented in the right way, just like the rest of the state of Florida. So that's the goal right there.
No, absolutely, and I know some of the outer fringes also include, what when we're talking about the Muck area, that also, Clewiston, those areas, maybe further extend out to Moorhaven because those teams usually traditionally play each other. I mean, when we're looking at this with the Muck area, I know that, for years, or even decades, as we're talking about, the rich tradition, the history, it would not be surprising, that you had, Glades Central, Pahokee, Clewiston, Glades Day, all these schools, all, four schools right around in that area sitting there either in state championship contention or playing for a state championship. But that's not been the case over the last, 10, 15 years. It's been ups and downs for these programs. And, when you look at that, what are the key factors that may be affecting these teams that are not being able to carry on some of the tradition that they've been able, that they have been able to be in contention for state championships every year?
One thing I can tell you is we have a lot of players, a lot of those who are from Belle Glade, South Bay, Pahokee, Clewiston, Moorhaven, even. We could also extend it to LaBelle and Okeechobee to a certain extent. It's called migration. So you have a job situation out there in the area, and you have parents that want to make a better life for their children. So when you see that going on, them migrating out to Palm Beach County or all the way out to schools such as Wellington, Palm Beach Central, Royal Palm Beach, Seminole Ridge, and plenty of other schools in Palm Beach County. And then you'll have some families venture out over onto the Treasure Coast as well, such as Martin County, Treasure Coast. You'll even have Vero Beach or one of the Fort Pierce schools every now and then. So you have the migration factor in there, and it really comes down to the parents just want to make a better life for their children in any way possible. So that's what that's about.
No, absolutely. That's the way you described it is even better than what I understood it to be. I know that some of the times, especially with the sugar industry out there, I know sometimes that's been an up and down thing too as well. But when we talk about the teams here, one team that has made a resurgence here so far for the first 4 weeks into the season is Glade Central, 4-0, and talk about what the Raiders are doing here, considering that they have been down on their luck a little bit over the last few years. I know they have had some struggles. They've had coaching changes, but here they are 4-0, and they're starting to make some noise again.
One thing that I can tell you, Josh, about Glade Central is that they have the right head coach, and Omar Hagabook. He's an award-winning former player. He actually won awards when he was a quarterback at Glade Central, and he's poised to do some really, really great things, not only for this year, but down the line as well. So expect to see a real resurgence for Glade Central, not just in the local area, but also in the state. I'll say it right now, this might seem far-fetched, but I wouldn't be surprised if we talk about them being in state title contention as early as next year. So I'm going to put that out there right now. One thing that we need to look out for their next few games. So they're going to be playing Dwyer on Thursday. That's going to be an interesting battle because Dwyer, they're just coming out of their first win of the season against Royal Palm. I know that Dwyer's not part of the Muck, but I will say that one of Dwyer's strengths is the running game. And that's another strength that we see for Glade Central. So we need to see how the running game for both teams will peter out for that game. And we can see a lot of that going forward for Glade Central throughout the season. Glade Central has one of the best offensive lines in all of Palm Beach County, led by senior Salas Souls. You also have Javari Lucas, who is a junior, recently received offers from Miami and Penn State. And then you have also Jerry Alcindor. That's another lineman who have received a couple of group of 5 offers from FIU, Bryant, and others. So it's really about the lines right now at Glade Central, powering everything that's going on with the team. The running game is really strong, and then you have special teams. And then you have just the whole organization is just really buying into whatever Coach Hagabook is selling to the program. They're all bought in. The community is bought in. It's really a great thing to see Glade Central coming back to resurgence. Really, really happy for them.
No, that's awesome right there. And, of course, Glade Central was receiving votes last week in the 2A side of the FloridaHSFootball.com state media poll by the sports writers and broadcasters and across the state here. And last week, Glade Central 43-6 over Moorhaven, who Moorhaven's in the rural. So two Muck area teams going at it last week, and Glade Central took care of business right there. But when we look at it, it's not just Glade Central and Belle Glade. There's Glade's Day, and a couple years ago, Glade's Day took the option of going the other way instead of staying in the FHA classifications. They went to the Sunshine State Athletic Association, and that kind of surprised a lot of people. But I think as you described and talked about some of the things here that have happened with the migration in the area, it's actually maybe not as surprising that Glade's Day went the other way, and they're competing in a association that is more like-minded for them in terms of they don't get the athletes like they used to. They don't have Kelvin Taylor running up there trying to rush for the state rushing record anymore. They don't have those players anymore. Those players are gone.
But what Glades Day did have a couple of years ago, I know you've probably heard of Jaron Hughley, who's over at Newman right now, doing great things over there for Carl Newman. He was at Glades Day a couple of years ago. Amos Bradford, who you just mentioned what Wes Brower did against Cardinal Gibbons, Amos Bradford, he was at Glades Day as well. So Glades Day has actually had some players coming up before they transfer to make their moves. So you never know. Glades Day can make a resurgence at any time. Just really happy that they are in a classification that they can compete well in. I've seen them compete well against teams like Jupiter Christian and others. And I just remember back in the day when you were just speaking on Kelvin Taylor, Glades Day and Jupiter Christian, they were battling it out year in and year out for a spot in the state title game. You're looking at Jupiter Christian, they won 2 state titles in that period. Glades, they won 2 state titles in that period. So you just never know. Never know what the future can hold. They just keep doing what they're doing. You never know. We start seeing players from the coast possibly coming back to the Muck. Glades Day being one of the schools that ends up benefiting down the line. You just never know what can happen.
No, absolutely. And of course, right up the road there along 441 and Highway 98, there's Pahokee. And, interesting. I know Pahokee just had to play Cardinal Newman. And Cardinal Newman gave them everything and then more. What is it about Pahokee this year? Is it going to be, do you feel like they're more middle of the road team where, they're going to get, maybe considering the way the world classification playoff brackets are going to be for the next 2 years, they're just going to be an A and a B division bracket. Do you feel like they have enough to be able to be one of those 16 teams that makes the A division bracket versus the B division bracket? Do you feel like they're in that process that they could get at least 5 to 6 wins, or they're kind of like with the scheduling, or is it going to be hard for them to get there?
What I can tell you right now, we look at historically at how they've done when it comes to the world classification. It's usually their schedule strength that actually catapults them to a high seed in the playoffs. And who knows, we can see that happening for them. Again, they're a young team that's learning very quickly on the fly. I know that they lost to Cardinal Newman the way that they lost, but it's going to be a learning experience for them. And they're just going to get better down the line. You will see starting this week against Palm Beach Gardens how much better they'll be just for the experience that they had against Carl Newman. And we know Carl Newman is one of the top 3 teams in Class 1A. So that's going to be a really good test for Pahokee that they actually played Carl Newman despite the loss. And I can see that really benefiting them down the line, that they've actually played some good teams, not just Carl Newman, but Palm Beach Central in week 1. That was a good test for them as well. So they've learned a lot through the wins and they've learned a lot through the losses. And I'm expecting great things for them moving forward.
No, absolutely. And just looking at Palm Beach County, because I know that's where you've been, all these years, especially Palm Beach County. Outside of the migration, what is, do you feel like the biggest changes is, outside of that is maybe the open enrollment and now NIL maybe to a certain extent? Is that, you feel like that has changed the dynamics of how Palm Beach County football has evolved over the last 10, 15 years?
I will say, we'll speak on right now what we're trying to do as a county is we're trying to close the gap between us and Broward and Dade. Right now, as you may or may not know, I'm just going to say it, Broward and Dade County don't consider Palm Beach County or the Treasure Coast part of South Florida. That's because we haven't won a state title in Palm Beach since 2013. When we start winning, then we'll start being seen as among South Florida's best here in Palm Beach County. So what we just have to do is just keep our players in our areas and stop trying to lose them to Broward County and Dade County. But the only way that we can keep them going here in Palm Beach County, keep them in Palm Beach, is by winning. It's all about winning. And that's what you're starting to see with Atlantic, all the great things that they're doing. They're like a semi-super team right now. You see what they're doing. They're one of the top few teams in Class 5A. You see that they beat Ely. They blew them out last week. And that's the team that beat Chaminade. So Atlantic has a chance to be one of the best teams in all of Florida. And the Max Preps, as you probably have already seen, they're the top 25 team in the whole state of Florida. So we have Atlantic, and then you also have West Boca Raton. That's another team that I'm really looking forward to making a big run. And they have players such as Javier Mallory. They have Mason Mallory. They have Jaden Broadnex. They have Xavier Reed. So many big-time players over there at West Boca Raton, coached by Dylan Potts, who I consider as the best coach in Palm Beach County. So I'm expecting West Boca to make a state title run this year, possibly even a state championship either this year or next year. So once we start seeing teams like Atlantic, West Boca, other teams such as Palm Beach Central, Carl Newman, and others making runs in the state playoffs, then we can really start closing the gap between us and Broward and Dade. That's what we want to see.
No, absolutely. And of course, I had Atlantic ranked in my top 25 last week, and they're going to be shooting up the rankings this week here in terms of the top 25 after that win over Blanche Ely. And it makes it really interesting, as you brought up, about the fact that Atlantic blew out Blanche Ely. And, it's like that's the same Blanche Ely team that took down Chaminade in overtime. So it's really interesting how the threads, I should say, are crossing each other in terms of the teams and who they're playing and how these game results have been happening. But Naji, as we're running out of time here, tell everybody where to find you, how to access Muck City Media, and everything on your socials.
All right, so our social media is as follows. So the website is muckcitymedia.com or muckcityme.com. So I have both websites there. And for Twitter, it's Muck City Media, at Muck City Media, and Instagram, Muck City Media ENT. So those are our social media platforms. So, Josh, really thank you so much for having me and giving me a chance to put the Muck in a positive spotlight. Appreciate you, Josh.
No, absolutely. And we want to make sure that these underserved areas all get their exposure. And this is what we can do here on the shows here, especially like the South Florida Blitz. And I appreciate you taking your time and getting able to come on and talk about it. And we'll definitely have you back on, especially as if we see what happens with the teams. Hey, if Glade Central makes it into the playoffs, or Pahokee, or it's quite a few teams in the Muck area, we'll definitely be having you on to talk about those teams, because they're going to need all the love and promotion they can get, especially in one of the areas that has been underserved for so long. And I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing for that to help bring and raise that awareness.
Thank you so much. Let's see what Glade Central does in week 8 against Bishop Vero, one of the top teams in the state.
Oh, yeah. That's a district game, and that'll be for a district title right there.
Yes, sir. Take care.
All right. Naji, thank you so much. You have a good one. Take care. Appreciate it, Naji. All right, that was Naji Tobias from Muck City Media joining us here on the South Florida Blitz, and we appreciated him coming on and talking Muck area football because, again, as I pointed out and Naji has pointed out, it is one of the underserved areas. It's what we call a donut in terms of the media coverage. There's a couple of those donut holes that we call in the state here, and that's one of those right there. And then we got a couple of areas up there along North Florida where the media coverage may not be as predominant compared to other areas around the state with how teams are covered in the high school football landscape, or high school sports landscape, I should say, because it's more than just high school football. But with that said, we're going to take our second water break, and then we're going to come back. We have the fan question. We've got a fan comment. If you got a comment question, hit the comment box between any of the platforms we're streaming on, which is Facebook, X/Twitter, or YouTube. Got a question, comment, just leave it on there. We'll bring it up here after the break, and then we have the pick 6 for week 5 coming up as well. Stay tuned. You're watching the South Florida Blitz right here on FloridaHSFootball.com. All right, welcome back here to the South Florida Blitz here on FloridaHSFootball.com. It is week number 5. Hard to believe we are at the pinnacle point, the midway point of the season, whereas we really start to find out what is the postseason picture going to start looking like, and we will start finding that out 1 week from today. 1 week from today, we'll start getting the FHA Max Preps power rankings coming in, and we will have the first Drive the State show for you next Tuesday night starting at 6 o'clock here on FloridaHSFootball.com and FloridaHSFootball.com social media platforms to break it all down for you in terms of who's in, who's out with the power rankings, because it will be fun to watch. And what's going to be a little different this year, as I mentioned, if you heard me mention just a few minutes ago with the interview with Naji, is that there is going to be the A division and the B division bracket for the terms of the playoff rankings in the world classification. Again, they're testing out a new format for the next 2 years to kind of see if it's something that's going to be viable for the rest of the Sunshine State to go with. And honestly, a little bit of opinion here in my thought is this, is that if it does work, I can say the elimination of districts altogether happening. And that might be a strong possibility depending on how this goes over the next 2 years for the world classification. And the world classification, again, being used as the test for this new model, and see if it's actually going to have any support and validity to being able to be implemented, not just maybe in football, but across all team sports in the Florida High School Athletic Association. So we'll see what happens there over the course of the next 2 years. But with that said, I don't have a question in the inbox, but hey guys, come on, South Florida, you got to do better than this in terms of leaving comments. You don't leave comments, you got to leave us some comments, leave us some questions so we can answer them, so we can fire you up and we can fire ourselves up here. So we got to get fired up. But I do have Noli here. Noli left a comment. How about that? Noli said, Josh, hey, Josh, I missed the live broadcast last night. Marky Cannon, I heard you joke. I have a collection plate. Talk about the state of affairs with college football with 2 of the biggest brands in the state. And but Noli is here watching tonight. Thank you, Noli. We're glad you're here. I know you missed us last night, but as you saw, that I had the Booker T. Washington Lakeland game in the picks, and that's Lakeland is sitting there. I think Lakeland will beat Booker T. Washington this week at Bryant Stadium. But with that said, it's time for the Pick 6 for week number 5, and we're gonna look at the results from last week. 2-3. Reason why it's not maybe 3-3 or 2-4 is that there's one game between True North and Archbishop McCarthy. The game has not been completed, and with that said, that game has been scratched out of the results. So we will see what happens from there. But 2-3 last week, and that brings my total to 14-14. And the South Florida Blitz, which is a perfect, not so perfect 500. So not really perfect, but right in the middle of the road. Hopefully I can right the ship this week and get a much better record in terms of the picks here, because I would like to have that start going a much better direction, considering that in some of the other shows, I am sitting north of 70% right on my picks, but South Florida has been getting me this year. So, but it's a lot of good ball games nonetheless. All right. First game up on the docket, I'm going with some Palm Beach football here this week. Some teams that we may not have talked about. Forest Hill, 3-1. Royal Palm Beach, 3-1. These 2 teams flying under the radar, but they're making some noise, especially Royal Palm Beach, who has been struggling for quite a while. But I like what head coach Chuck Kenyon's been doing. He kind of walked into that program having to clean up some things, and now it's got the Wildcats focused, and this is where I feel like they're going to beat the Forest Hill Falcons, and I'm taking Royal Palm Beach to win this week and go to 4-1 on the season at home. I think if this game was at Forest Hill, I might take Forest Hill, but that's why I'm sticking with Royal Palm Beach in this one, just because it's more of a coin flip type game when we're looking at the picks here. All right. Number 2, the game number 2 on our list this week is Dillard, 3-1 at Miramar, 1-2. When these 2 teams go at it, I forget the records, throw the records out. These 2 teams will battle. They'll play each other hard. But we got to think about it. All right, Miramar's 2 losses were shutout losses. They it was 2-0, 2-0 to Plantation, 27-0 to Miami Norland. And honestly, I mean, this is at Miramar, and I like this, but I like what Dillard's doing. Dillard's starting to pick up the pace, and I really think the Dillard Panthers have the leverage here in terms of being able to win this game, just because the way they're playing right now. And I'm going to take the Dillard Panthers. They scored 60 points this past week, so that's part of my reasoning why I'm leaning on Dillard in this game to win this one against Miramar. All right. Game number 3, Blanche Ely. Yes, that same Blanche Ely who just lost to Delray Beach Atlantic, who beat Chaminade Madonna in week 2. All right. They're at Piper. Piper's 4-0. And, Piper's been flying under the radar. And this is where I feel like Blanche Ely's schedule is going to pay dividends here in this situation, who they have played so far. All right. If anything, I would believe that the Blanche Ely Tigers are probably going to be very, very humbled after that loss to Atlantic. As you heard Naji describe, Atlantic's like this mini superpower team right now. And sure enough, that score last week is a very indicator of that. And I really think the Tigers here in this situation are going to come away and beat the Bengals. And that's why they will be 4-1, and they will hand Piper their first loss of the season. All right, rolling along here. Columbus versus Northwestern. Both teams are 2-2. I talked about Columbus's struggles earlier. Got Teddy Bridgewater. Miami Northwestern has been in every single game they have played this year. They have won 2 of those games. They were in an overtime battle against Venice. And you only lose by 4 to Miami Norland, the Class 2M state runner-up from last year. However, because the way Columbus has been playing, Columbus defending 4M state champion, I get it. All right, I know y'all are going to tell me that. All right, tough schedule. All right, sure. But the way Teddy Bridgewater has gotten Miami Northwestern on track, playing in close ball games like we have known the Bulls to do. And I feel like Columbus has struggled. I don't know which Columbus we're going to see this week. This makes me nervous. That's why I'm taking Teddy Bridgewater and Miami Northwestern to win this game against Columbus and move them to 3-2 and put Columbus below 500 here this season. So, all right. We got game number 5 coming up here, and this one's Dandy at Traz Powell. American Heritage Plantation versus Miami Central, and American Heritage, coming off that 23-3 win. Naples, on the battle among the Alligator Alley. Miami Central 3-1. Again, blew out Pompano Beach 67-0. All right. I expect this game to be more on the potentially 20-point range for each team. I mean, this game could come down to a field goal. These teams are going to battle each other down to the wire. I mean, if we got to remember, let's go back to 2022 when those two teams played in the state championship game in Class 2M, and that was a battle of a battle. So this is why, if this game was at American Heritage, I'd take American Heritage. But this game's at Traz Powell. But again, I know I said it week 1, Lakeland, it's Traz Powell. They're not going to go in and win that game because it's just in a tough environment. But this is South Florida versus South Florida, a little different story. If this was American Heritage, I'd take American Heritage. But this is at Traz Powell. I am taking the Rockets here to pick up their 4th win of the season and keep the winning going. So, with that said, let's roll into our final game of the Pick 6 here. And that is Miami Norland at Chaminade Madonna. I mean, here's the thing. You had to battle against Northwestern here this past week. If you're Norland, you had to battle. How tired are you? Have you been able to recover? Chaminade Madonna just really rolled right over Miami Edison, which, by the way, that was a district game for the Lions. So, with that said, this one, man, It's not as tough as I'm making it out to be, because really, honestly, I'm taking Shaman Madonna here with the pick. I just believe the Lions are going to be able to flex a muscle here this week and hand New Orleans their first loss of the season. I know that it was close. I thought New Orleans was going to lose last week to Miami Northwestern, edged it out in a battle. But this week, Shaman Madonna is Shaman Madonna. I know that 2-2 Shaman Madonna is not what we're usually traditionally used to seeing him, but it's a game on the road for New Orleans, and it's at Shaman Madonna. It's in the Lions' den. And I just can't go against the Lions here this week. So we'll see how I do in the picks this week. Come next week, in the same time, same space, here on the South Florida Blitz, as we wrap things up here. And all right, final thoughts. Well, I mean, it's hard to believe we're already at week 5, and we're going to have the first Drive the State show starting up next week here on FloridaHSFootball.com. And we're going to break it down starting at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, breaking down everything for the shows in terms of with the playoffs, with the first set of FHA Max Preps power rankings. And it'll be really, really interesting to see where things go and how things look coming ahead on Tuesday of next week. Okay, I know some people are going to tell me real quick here that, okay, well, it's going to look similar to what's on MaxPress.com. Yes, that's correct. But there could be a few different factors depending on if teams forfeit or not. So when forfeits come into play, there is going to be a different factor than what we will see necessarily on MaxPress.com. So that's why we're going to rely strictly on what the FHA.com puts out. We can look ahead and kind of see where things are going to go, but we will need to see what happens from there. But, yes, and Pretty Purr, yes, I do see your comment. Yes, North Florida is coming up right after this at 8:30. So, yes, we'll talk about those Rams Vikings in that show there coming up here. You can talk about that. I can put the comments up and stuff, so we'll talk about that here coming up here in a couple minutes. But, yes, with that said, it is time to wrap it up here for the South Florida Blitz, and we get ready for the North Florida Blitz coming up in 12 minutes, 8:30. Right here on FloridaHSFootball.com and the FloridaHSFootball.com social media platforms. Scan the QR code, download the FloridaHSFootball.com app, follow us on social media at FloridaHSFootball, except on X and Twitter. That is at FLAHSFootball. All right, we'll see you here soon on the North Florida Blitz. This is South Florida Blitz signing out for this show number 6. We'll see you next week right here.